Small Stories from Life Part 13. Here is the first story. Life is not as bad as you think. Once upon a time, there was a poor man who lived with his wife, 5 sons and daughters-in-law in a small, damp and old wooden house. The lack of life made him depressed. One day, he decided to go to a wise man to seek help. He said, "My family is large, but we have to live together in a small and cramped wooden house. We argue all day long. Life is no different from hell. I don't want to live anymore." The wise man asked him what he had in his house. He replied that his house only had 1 cow, 1 goat and a flock of chickens. The wise man immediately said, "Go home and do it my way instead of locking the cows, goats and chickens outside. Let them live together in the house. Only then will you be able to escape this difficult situation. Everything will be fine." The man was surprised after hearing this but still agreed to do it. After only 1 night, he returned to find the sage and complained miserably. "What the hell did you tell me? Things not only didn't get better, but they got worse. Now my house has really turned into hell. The chickens are jumping around, and every step I take, I step on chicken feathers or chicken droppings. I really don't want it." The sage smiled and said, "You should just go home and not let the chickens live with me anymore." Not even 2 days had passed when this man came to see the sage again with a sad face. He cried and said that the mountain goat chewed everything in the house. "My life was like a nightmare." The sage listened and said, "Let the goat out." 3 days later, he came again and complained that my whole family had endured to follow your words and live with the cow, but now I couldn't stand it anymore. My house was no different from a cowshed. How could a person live with a cow? The sage calmly said, "Then you go home and let the cow out." A few days later the man came to the sage again, but this time he was very happy. "Thank you for making my life more comfortable. Now all the cattle are outside, so my little house is quiet, spacious and clean. I am very happy." The lesson is that your current situation may not be as you wish, and on the surface it may seem very bad, but life is much more terrible than that, so no matter what happens, don't be too disappointed or sad. Be optimistic and you will see that life is beautiful. Thank you for listening.
Followed by the second story, Run Around the House 3 Times. A man would run around the house 3 times every time he was angry with someone. Later on, his house grew bigger and bigger, but every time he was angry, he would run around the house 3 times. When he got old and weak and had to use a cane, he still kept the old habit every time he was angry. One time, he didn't know who he was angry with, but he used a cane and ran around the house. When the sun went down, he still hadn't done 3 times. His grandson saw this and ran out and asked, "Grandpa, why do you run around the house 3 times every time you're angry?" He replied that he was still young. He ran around the house 3 times and thought that his house was small and the garden was small, so there was no need to waste time and energy being angry with others. Just thinking about it made him stop being angry. Thanks to that, he had the time and motivation to continue working. His grandson asked again, but now that he was rich, why did he still have to keep that habit? He smiled and now he walked and thought that his house was big and his fields and gardens were plentiful, so why should he compare himself with others? Just thinking like that, he was no longer angry. The lesson is that if we know how to control ourselves, no one can make us angry. Living happily or suffering is our choice. Thank you for listening.
Followed by the third story, They Are All Passersby. Once a famous director got lost in a mountainous area. He walked and walked until it was completely dark. He was extremely desperate when he saw a light coming from afar and he ran quickly towards it. "This is not a motel," the landlord flatly refused when the director asked him, "I would like to ask you 3 questions, and if after 3 questions I can prove that this is a motel, will you let me stay for the night?" The landlord laughed and said that it was impossible. "But if you can prove it, I will let you stay in the house," the landlord replied. "Before you, who lived in this house?" "My father." "Before your father, who lived here?" "My grandfather." "So if you die, who will live here?" "Of course it will be my son." "See," the director laughed loudly, "he was only temporarily living in this house as a passerby." So that night the director slept soundly in the warm house. The above story refers to the impermanence in a humorous and interesting way in the world. We are all just passersby. No one knows what tomorrow will bring and nothing belongs to us forever. So instead of keeping it all to yourself, let's share what we have so that everyone can enjoy the best things. Thank you for listening.
Followed by the fourth story, sharing the same fate. A man had to sell both his villa and his car because of a failed business. His only means of transportation now is an old motorbike. One day, he and his wife rode a motorbike to a meeting with friends. A friend saw this and asked, "Why are you riding a motorbike today?" The husband silently looked at his friend with an embarrassed expression. The wife smiled and replied, "If you ride a motorbike, I can hug you." Lesson learned: only in hardship can we know who truly loves us. Only love from a sincere heart can help us face difficulties and overcome life's challenges together. Thank you for listening.
Followed by the fifth story, happiness. The rich man and the poor man argued about happiness. The poor man insisted that happiness is the present. The rich man looked at the poor man's ragged appearance and sneered, "What do you have now that makes you happy?" Happiness is owning a house with hundreds of rooms and money. Not long after, a fire burned down the house, leaving the rich man penniless overnight. One hot summer day, the rich man passed by the poor man's simple thatched house and stopped by to ask for some water. The poor man brought out a cup of cold tears and asked, "What is happiness to you now?" The rich man answered without thinking, "Happiness is this cup of water." The lesson learned is that happiness is the present. Don't expect happiness from far away, but appreciate what you have. Here we would like to end this story. Thanks for listening. Hello and see you again in Small Stories of Life Part 14.
Cô này là cốt khỉ nè. Rồi, hai lần dài, hai vừa đủ. Tại vì bà ôm như vậy, anh phải ôm cái thay. Đâu phải cái thay là chồng đâu mà ôm.